Hey pals, welcome back. So my girlfriend's laptop was on its last legs, so I went out and bought her a new upgrade. This is Macbook Neo, and even though it's Apple's most affordable laptop, it's a really great option for someone who only needs a device for web browsing, streaming video, and basic productivity tasks. As a long-time Mac user, I'm going to be setting this up for her, so I figured I'd share that process. I'll be going through the best settings, which apps you should download, along with some general tips and tricks to get the absolute most out of this device. Alright, let's do this. Okay, so once you've gone through the initial setup process where you sign into your Apple account, set up things like Siri and Touch ID if you've bought a device that has it, then you're going to be met with this screen here. So from here, the first thing I want you to do is to go into your system settings, which you can access by pressing the Apple in the top left, and then you'll see it on the drop-down menu. From here, I want you to scroll down the list on the left here. I know this is obvious to some people, but after speaking to my girlfriend, it might not be as intuitive as Apple might want you to believe. So you just use two fingers and you literally just slide up the trackpad and that will scroll just like you would on an iPhone or an iPad. And then you'll be able to see a lot more options underneath. So the first one I want you to jump into is appearance. So this is where you're actually going to find the top level customization options. For example, if you wanted to switch between light or dark mode, you'll find all of that here, along with liquid glass and the color theme options. So as you can see, the default is to match the color of the MacBook Neo that you've purchased. In this case, it's the blush pink. So that's why everything is showing up as pink here. In this case, I'm going to leave it as the default just because I'm going to leave it up to my girlfriend to decide what she wants to do. And then following on from that, we can see that there are some options for windows at the bottom, including the sidebar icon size, along with whether you want to tint the window background based on the wallpaper that you set. No issues there. The next one I'm going to go to is the menu bar settings. So this actually refers to the icons you can see up in the top right. I'll be honest, the menu bar doesn't have the best customization options, so there is a fix for that, which I'll talk about a little bit later on in the video. But there is one thing you should absolutely turn on here in the battery options, and that is to show the battery percentage. The default is just a little bit difficult to ascertain how much battery you actually have, especially on a smaller screen like this. So turning this on is just a much more helpful metric to quickly glance to. From here, there are a couple of things I would also recommend turning on, including Bluetooth and AirDrop. This just gives you a very quick method of jumping into those features, but obviously you can select these based on whether they're useful for you. You'll also see that some of the options here have the option to show when active only. So for example, if you're using a focus mode and you don't want that to be turned on all the time, this just gives you the option to show that when you need it rather than it cluttering up that menu bar. Okay, perfect. Next, we're going to jump into the desktop and dock options. So there's quite a lot in here, so don't get overwhelmed. It basically just refers to everything that you can see behind the settings here. So along the bottom, you've obviously got all your apps, you've got some widgets on the desktop, along with some additional options for things like Windows and mission control, which will all make sense in just a moment. We're only going to be focusing on this top section really. Here you can change the dock size along with the magnification if you decide to turn it on. Basically just means as you hover over the apps, they magnify slightly. So if you have gone for a slightly smaller dock size, you can actually increase the magnification so that it's a lot easier to see which app you're selecting. Personally, I prefer not to have magnification turned on. However, I do like having a smaller dock. It just looks a little bit cleaner on the desktop, but we are actually going to come back to this in just a moment. So let's move on to displays next. So there's a couple of options here which allows you to scale the resolution to be slightly bigger or to have slightly more space. Personally, I prefer to have more room. I don't mind things looking a little bit smaller, but I know some people prefer to have bigger text, and that's absolutely fine. This is where you will find those settings. You'll also see an option here to automatically adjust brightness. I'm not really a fan of my brightness changing automatically, so I turn this off, but this is obviously personal preference. At the bottom of this page is where you'll find the night shift settings. So if you prefer to minimize the amount of blue light you see in the evenings, this is where you can toggle that, and you can see that there are some options for scheduling along with the color temperature. Personally, I don't really like having this on, especially when I'm doing things like video editing or, anything related to color. So I leave that switched off typically, but again, personal preference. Okay, and then the last thing in the system settings I want you to check out is the wallpaper tab. So here you'll see a bunch of the default Apple wallpapers along with dynamic wallpapers, which obviously change throughout the day. There are a bunch of really cool landscape and cityscape wallpapers here that are actually the same as you'll find on the Apple TV. I think they're really cool, definitely worth playing around with. I'm actually going to be using one of the options from my Trail wallpaper pack. You can find this for sale on my website, so I'll make sure to leave a link in the description. Okay, cool. So we can go ahead and close our system settings now, which is going to take us back to the desktop. So my girlfriend is mostly going to be using this laptop for writing her screenplays, occasionally editing content for social media and managing her emails. So I'm going to be downloading some apps specific to her needs, but there are 7 apps I think everyone should download after they buy a new Mac. Okay, so the first is called Launchy, and basically it's a very simple tool that allows you to quickly open apps using this little wheel that pops up when you hold the Option and Command keys. As you can see, there are 6 apps which can be quickly opened, but they are completely configurable if you wanted to change these to something that better suits your workflow. In this case, I've left them in their default configuration, but it just goes to show how quickly you can open an app rather than diving into the applications folder. The next is called Alt-Tab. If you're new to the Mac experience, then you might be a bit surprised to see how clunky this is compared to Windows. So in this case, it's going to be Command-Tab, which then gives you this small menu and allows you to quickly switch between the tabs. But if you've got multiple windows open for Safari, for example, it doesn't really give you much options or granularity compared to what you'd find on Windows. So Alt-Tab is basically a better solution for this, where instead of pressing Command, you actually press the Option key, which then gives you a preview of all the windows you currently have open. This is just one of those small quality of life improvements that goes a long way when you've got lots of windows open. Up next, we have Blip, which is basically a much better solution for sharing files compared to AirDrop. So AirDrop is obviously one of the big reasons why people jump into the Apple ecosystem, but it does get a little bit unreliable when sending large or lots of files. Blip solves that by basically having 0 limitation on file size, and also allows you to send to devices that aren't necessarily Apple. So if you've got an Android phone or a Windows laptop, then you can easily transfer files between those devices, and it works really well. You literally just click the device you want to send files to, drag and drop the folder, and it's as quick as that. It's honestly such a good app. Obviously, the Neo doesn't have a lot of storage, even on this upgraded version, so to keep on top of all my files, I actually like to use an app called Daisy Disk. Unfortunately, this is a paid app, however, it's a one-time payment, and I've used this for years now, so it's definitely worth it. As you can see, you just scan the folder that you want to get a better look at, which then gives you this really nice visual that you can deep dive into. You can get a better look at the file structure, and then you can pick out any files that might be potentially clogging up your storage. From here, you can then see all the files within those folders, which you can then drag into this bottom corner to delete all in one go. Obviously, I've just set up this MacBook, so there isn't really a lot to delete, but you get the idea. So there are 2 USB-C ports on the MacBook Neo, which are by far the best way of connecting external devices. Now, the only issue with USB-C cables is you never really know whether that cable is capable of file transfers or if it's just power only. So there's an app called What Cable, which I highly recommend because it essentially reads the E marker that's built into the cable and tells you what that cable is capable of. This ensures that you're using the right cable when you're using something like an SSD, rather than something that could potentially slow down your file transfers. Something to keep in mind is that there is only 1 port on the MacBook Neo capable of those higher transfer speeds, so just make sure that you plug whatever you're testing into the port closer to the back. Super simple, but really helpful app. Up next is Downy, which basically allows you to download any video from the internet. I mostly use this for downloading YouTube content so that I can either watch it later or refer to it in one of my videos, but as you can see, this will cause this pop-up to appear. Obviously, YouTube doesn't want you to download their content, so that's why, but for the time being, it does still work and it is a really helpful tool. Okay, so finally we have Ice. So all of these apps will start to clog up your menu bar, and macOS doesn't really let you manage this in a very effective way. Ice gives you a way to manage the layout of your menu bar and also gives you a toggle to quickly hide those icons for a cleaner look. It's open source and completely free, so it's one of the first things I recommend people download for their new Mac. Okay, cool. Let's finish off with some tips and tricks. So the first thing I like to do when I set up a new Mac is customize my desktop. Obviously, I've already set up my wallpaper, but I want to make sure the rest of the experience works for me. The first thing I want to do is get rid of these default widgets, and I'm going to replace them with some of my own. So when you right click on the desktop, which you do by pressing 2 fingers on the trackpad, it will show the edit widgets option here. So this is going to bring up all of your available widgets. However, I would recommend enabling iPhone mirroring first, because that's going to allow you to use some of the iPhone app widgets as well as the Mac ones. For example, I really like the Not Boring Weather app for its super minimal interface. So let's bring that in, but we can actually take this a step further by going back to our system settings. And then if you remember, in the appearance tab, there's actually a way to tint the widget so that it matches the rest of our desktop experience. All right, that's starting to look really good, but the dock is definitely looking a bit busy. So I'd recommend getting rid of some of the apps that you don't think you'll be using on the regular. For example, I don't need the mail client because that's something that I know Francesca uses in Chrome. So we can remove that from the dock along with maps, and even the calendar can go because again, that's something that she uses in browser. Obviously the dock is starting to look quite small now that we've got rid of some apps. So we can actually drag this line here to make it a little bit bigger and easier to manage. Also, if you right click on either of these two lines, then that's a shortcut to get to our dock settings. And I'm just going to remove some of the suggested and recent apps because it just looks a bit messy to me. Okay, this is definitely starting to look a bit nicer. Just one more thing, you can actually customize folders. So if you right click on the folder and then scroll down to where it says customize, you can actually add an icon for something a bit more specific, but if you wanted something more fun, you can even add an emoji on this tab here. Speaking of emojis, this is definitely a bit of a pain point in macOS. Most of the time you can right click and it will bring up the option to see the emoji keyboard, but if you're in something like Notion, which doesn't support this, then you'll have to use a keyboard shortcut like Control Command Space or Function E, which is slightly easier to remember. Something else that might not be super obvious is how you navigate the desktop using trackpad gestures. So if you set a window to be full size, it's obviously then going to take up the entire screen. The way that you get back to your previous desktop is to use 3 fingers and then swipe across the screen. That's then going to allow you to quickly switch between the two, which on a smaller screen like this is probably the right way to approach your workflow. Otherwise, things are going to feel a little bit busy. One more trackpad gesture that I think is worth knowing is pinching all of your fingers together, which will bring up the applications menu. Also, if you swipe up with 3 fingers, that's going to show you all of your active desktops, and it just gives you a way of quickly navigating between all of those. There's a bit of a common theme forming here, but one of the other things that's not super obvious is how you take screenshots. So if you want to take a screenshot of the entire screen, that's going to be Command, Shift, and 3. But if you wanted a bit more control over this, then you can do Command, Shift, and 4, which brings up this tool to select specific parts of your screen. All of these screenshots will end up in the Documents folder, which you can find by pressing the Finder app. I have to be honest, the Finder app is still pretty terrible, so there's a few changes I would recommend to get a bit more use out of this. When the Finder app is open, you can find these settings up here. And then from there, I would actually recommend changing some of the sidebar options. So for example, by default, you're going to have some of these available, and I would just make sure that the obvious ones like desktop, downloads, and recents are all selected. Next, you should go into view and then customize toolbar. And then from here, you can actually add 2 things that are super helpful. The first one being AirDrop, which should absolutely just be a default, but isn't there for some reason. And the other is delete, just for slightly easier file management. Now you can save yourself a lot of time by just clicking the file and then deciding whether to share or delete it. All right, looking good. So that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully you found some of that helpful. If you did, make sure you subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.